This is a video that I have lost sleep over for months. A video that I knew I had to do, a video upon reflection on my whole IVF journey, and a video that would introduce what I'm about to show you in the coming weeks. But the reason why I've lost so much sleep over it is because I just keep thinking, how much should I share? What do people want to know? How can I do this in a way that respects me and my partner? You know, what can I share? I have just not stopped thinking about this, but I am finally at peace with finally sharing this, and I'm really excited because this has been the hardest thing to keep from everyone. For those of you who don't know, if this is the first time you're watching any of my videos, I'm Jade Walker. I'm a naturopath. I have a very special interest in endometriosis, fertility, women's health, gut health. But the one thing that I've never been able to share until now is my own fertility journey. A lot of you were aware that I had been trying to conceive, but no one really knew that we were going through IVF. So I really just cannot wait to share this with you because it's something that people feel so lonely about when they're going through it. But really, there are so many people who are going through it. And IVF is becoming more and more common for so many different reasons. And I really want to shed some light on it. I want to take away any kind of stigma or pain or, feeling bad about going through IVF, particularly as a naturopath. That was something I did struggle with, and I did have to come to terms with, but I'm actually really proud about it now, and I'm really passionate about it too. And apart from the fact that we are pregnant, the one thing that I feel this has just been such a big purpose for is that it's helped me find an even deeper passion in my own practice, and that is honing in on fertility even more, and particularly with IVF, because it's a whole different subcategory. So the fact that I've gone through it myself, it just helps in so many ways. But the one thing everyone wants to know is, why did we end up choosing IVF? And to be honest, in all the videos that I have recorded over the last several months with the whole process of IVF, going through the scans and the tests and everything like that, I never really talked about that element because I was respecting me and my partner's privacy. But after speaking to my partner about it and, asking him, what should we and shouldn't we share, he was happy to share all of it. And, this just makes me so happy because I want to bring awareness to these reasons, so that other people can understand that these might be something, things that people need to look into, and also know that it is really common. So I'll just take you back where my fertility journey all started. So to be honest, I've been practicing for 3 years now. And when I was finishing my degree in my last couple of years, my husband wanted to start trying then. And I was like, no way, I do not want a baby while we're studying, I want to finish this degree. So we agreed on that. And then I was like, you know what, the wedding's not too far away. Like, let's obviously, get that out of the way. I don't care about, being pregnant after getting married or anything like that, but it was just more a convenience thing. So we did that, and then we decided there were a few other things that we wanted to do. We also were so broke after I finished my degree. My husband had to really spread himself thin while I was finishing it off full time. So then, all these little things kind of kept coming up. We were going to start trying, and then we didn't. And then we said, we'd start at the start of last year, but then we were going to Greece. So we're like, well, what if I'm pregnant while we're in Greece? And, there was just all these things that kept delaying it. I haven't been on any contraception for about 6 years. I do follow the natural family planning method. With that said, when you're in a loving relationship, there's times you're more lax. I've never fallen pregnant before. So it was actually at the end of last year when we went to Greece that we thought we'll start trying while we're in Greece, which was around September, October last year. And I was so excited, and I thought, being a naturopath, it should start, I know what needs to be in place. I've been taking all the preconception vitamins for a year now because, you know, we kept delaying it. And I reckon I should be able to fall pregnant pretty quickly. And so when I got back from Greece, I was positive that I'd fallen pregnant straight away, because it was about day 24 into my cycle when I started getting really, really light spotting. And I instantly thought, this must be implantation bleeding, which is what happens when the embryo implants, and some women get a little bit of implantation bleeding. And because it was so light on, plus it was really early, and my cycle was always 28 days. And so I was adamant. I was like, oh my God, this could be it. And I was getting really, really mild cramping, but nothing significant. I was that excited that I called my mum and told her. And then later on in the day though, that pain started to ramp up. I was still spotting, but the pain was becoming quite severe, but it was all a little bit different and a little bit off. And then the bleeding started to get heavier, and I started Googling every blog trying to satisfy my curiosity that, you know, some people get really heavy and painful implantation bleeding. I did not want to convince myself that this was another period. Even though, you know, I was pretty hopeful that, like, thinking that I'd fall pregnant straight away. Anyway, so then the pain started getting worse. And then the other issue I ran into was, if I am pregnant, you shouldn't use any non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. But if it's my period, I need to get on the NSAID straight away to get on top of this pain because of the endo pain that I've always suffered with. And so I was like in this dilemma, and the pain was really, really ramping up. I was just writhing on the floor, but I was just, you know, I was being so careful. I didn't want it to end up being, harming a possible pregnancy. So I ended up going to the doctor, and we did some blood tests, and by that point I was pretty sure I wasn't pregnant anymore because the bleeding had gotten pretty heavy. But I couldn't understand why my period had come so early and all of a sudden it got quite heavy. And so we did some tests. I mean, he was just like, look, it's probably just a rogue period. You've just come back from overseas, you're jet lagged, the change and everything, which makes sense. Also, to be honest, like, I went from being super gluten and dairy free to, when I was in Greece, eating that every single day for just about breakfast, lunch and dinner. Plus I didn't drink at all. And then in Greece, I was having wine every day and that kind of thing. And that can really throw your period out too. So, when I looked at that, I thought maybe that's the case. But what that did spark within me was needing to reopen the doors for investigating endo, because by this point I didn't actually have an official diagnosis. You guys who followed my journey would know that I had a laparoscopy when I was 21, and then they said nothing was found. So I went on a really long journey to get to my diagnosis. So when I was at the doctor, he also said, look, I can write you for a referral for an ultrasound, but you'll probably just throw it in the bin. And I said, to be honest, no, I won't. I'm probably due for one just to double check. Of course, we know we can't pick up endo or most forms of endo on general ultrasound, but it was still good just to get some things checked up. At that point, one thing led to another. We did identify that I had a large pedunculated fibroid sitting on top of my uterus. But apart from that, everything else looked fine. But I started to just really dive into endo again. And long story short, I mean, you guys know this story if you've listened to my podcasts or you've read my blogs and all those kind of things. You'll know most of this. So I'm going to try and skip ahead. But basically, one thing led to another. I got in to see Dr. Russell Dalton at OGB Ballarat, and I went from seeing him in around October, November, actually I think it was November, to having excision surgery in the January. So then it was confirmed I had endo, and he removed the fibroid too. So he was very confident that after the endo was removed, the fibroid was removed, I should be able to fall pregnant within a few months. And this is very common. You hear this a lot with women with endo, or people with endo, that they will have that surgery, and some people fall pregnant within that month, or they fall pregnant the next month, because you're removing all those inflammatory lesions, and also if there's any structural damage, you're freeing up room for everything to take place as it should. For me, there was no structural damage. You know, my tubes were flowing perfectly. They did the dye test. The dye ran through. He said my uterus was wonderful. I had endo on the uterosacral ligaments, which is behind the uterus, and then also some of my bladder. That was removed. I had some adhesions, not to do with endo, but where I had my appendix removed when I was 15. So they freed that up and he took away the fibroid. And even though the fibroid wasn't inside the uterus, he said that fibroids release a chemical that can also impair fertility as well. So I was feeling really positive after this, and I was like, I reckon we're gonna fall pregnant in the next few months. I was so sure. And, you know, a couple of months went by, I still wasn't falling pregnant. You know, my cycles they regulated out pretty quickly. I've never had an issue with irregular cycles, always been bang on. And it was at this point where I said to my husband, you know, you need to get your sperm tested as well. And this is something that us as naturopaths are very passionate about, because it's often something that just goes overlooked for far too long. You know, all the pressure's on the woman, and then you find out later something's going on there. So he ended up going to his GP and just getting a general semen analysis done. He went to his doctor to get the results. They said to him there were still some results pending, but everything looked good. And so of course anyone would take that as, oh sweet, I'm fine. So he came home, told me everything was fine. But in my job, we always push, get a printout and get those full results, because the amount of things that I see go missing is just crazy. So he called up to get the results, got the printout. I took a look, and sure enough, there were a few things that were not great. They were not optimal at all. So he spoke to a different GP, and they said they're not sure why that happened, but you know, they just kind of brushed it off. And at the time, I had also booked in to see a fertility expert naturopath. And I sent her the results, and she, by the way, her name's Stacey Roberts, and she was incredible. She's written the Baby Maker book. She's got online course. She's very well known. She's got, I think, like 30 years of experience with fertility, and she came highly recommended. So I saw her, I sent her the results, and she said, yeah, definitely not optimal. However, there are so many factors that can affect sperm. So everything from stress, you know, diet, lifestyle, alcohol, coffee, so many things. And at the time of him doing that semen analysis, he'd actually just come off a week of night shift. So he literally got home, had been up all night, did the test, gave the sample. And also a weekend before that was his birthday, and all the boys had gotten, you know, quite wasted. So we're like, you know what, that probably wasn't the most optimal sample. So we weren't feeling too disheartened by it. And, you know, I was like, well, we know what to do. So got him on every sperm boosting supplement and herb you can imagine. And there are a lot of evidence-based subs that I'm going to talk about in another video. So he did that, and it also motivated him to try and, you know, cut back on the alcohol. I mean, he doesn't drink much alcohol anyway, but just, you know, cutting back a little bit more. And he did such a good job, and took everything. And anyway, we kept trying for a few months, still wasn't falling pregnant. And it was becoming really disheartening by this point, you know, even though, like, looking back, and now meeting so many people who were trying to conceive from anywhere from 4 years to 10 years, like my small window of the moment that we actively started conceiving to when we fell pregnant with IVF was exactly around 1 year, which doesn't seem like that long, but honestly, every month that goes by feels like torture. And especially because I had a bit of pressure on myself being a naturopath, and I just couldn't figure out, like, what is wrong with me? Why isn't this happening? And, you know, there were so many times when I would be driving home and I'd just start crying, or like another friend fell pregnant and I'd start crying. You know, I felt like at one point there was a pregnancy announcement every single day on Instagram and Facebook, and it was so hard. It was so gut-wrenching. And what a lot of people who are, you know, on this trying to conceive journey will tell you is the most frustrating thing is when someone falls pregnant who, you know, isn't that healthy, or they, you know, or like even their partner may be an alcoholic or something like that, and not passing judgment, but it's just frustrating when you have to spend all this money, put all this time and effort into trying to improve your chances when you're already fairly healthy as it is. But for some reason, maybe genetics dealt you a shitty hand when it comes to these things. So that was always the hardest thing. It was just constantly, why me? Like, why do I have to be impacted like this? So anyway, it was getting on a bit. I think we'd been trying to conceive for about 8 or 9 months. And so I went back to Russell, my endo specialist, who is an advanced trained excision surgeon, and he's also an IVF specialist. And I said to, you know, I went and saw him. I was like, look, I'm still not pregnant. Wondering, you know, what's the next step? Because I was kind of like at a loss, because I was doing all the things that I thought I should be doing. And one thing that really annoyed me, and you'll hear this a lot, is they say, is hubby healthy and well? And I'm like, yeah, he's healthy and well, like, because he goes to the gym, you know, he's really fit. And they always just brush it off, and they're like, oh, cool, no worries, that's fine then. And never once asked to do a semen test. And I actually then picked him up and I said, well, actually, we did do a semen analysis. It wasn't that great, but we've been trying to work on it. We haven't retested since. And I said, they've actually sent the copy to you. So he pulled it up and had a look, and he froze for a few moments, and then he just said, yeah, look, you're gonna have to go to IVF straight away. And I was like, oh, really? And he said, yeah, it's very unlikely that you're gonna fall pregnant with these levels. And I mean, to be honest, there was a massive sigh of relief for me, because I went in that appointment already, you know, thinking that we may need to start considering IVF. And that was just such a relief for me, for one, to confirm that that's what we're going to do, and two, also to know that it wasn't all me. I'm not saying that it wasn't all me at all, but to know that there were 2 factors involved, it takes the pressure off a little bit, and also lets you know that, you know, all you've been doing isn't for nothing. So I came home and told my husband, and he, you know, he was really excited as well, because we both just wanted an answer. We both wanted to get this ball rolling. And so, you know, this is something maybe I'll talk about in another video, but some people might wonder why we went to IVF so soon, because some people will, you know, wait years till they try IVF. But I think it helps the fact that I'm a naturopath. I see people go through fertility all the time, and I know so many people who've been trying for years and years. We did not want to wait that long. I just wasn't going to wait another year trying things that may or may not work. For us, we had accepted months prior that IVF is an acceptable option, and that's something that we never really second guessed. So it actually, we were really excited about it, and we couldn't wait to tell everyone that we were going to start IVF. So we then, you know, started the process. It was fairly quick. You know, we had an appointment with the nurse to talk about the whole process, and the nurse went through, you know, when we can get started. I think it was about 2 months till we could get started. And then my husband had to go to Ballarat, because this Ballarat IVF and OGB Ballarat, obviously in Ballarat. And so he had to go there a couple of times to give some semen samples, because what they do with the IVF is they will, you know, take my eggs, put his sperm with the eggs. And we did ICSI as well, because when there are some troubles with the sperm, they like to actually implant the sperm inside the egg, whereas sometimes they'll just let the sperm do their thing and hopefully one will implant. But in our case, ICSI was the best option. And so he had to give a couple of samples, and interestingly, the first sample there was no difference in the quality, you know, the morphology, the count, all of that was fairly, really suboptimal, really. And so the first sample he gave, it was still not that great. So they got him to come back and give another one. Unfortunately, on that last one, they said it looked much better. It still wasn't, you know, right up there with how we'd always want them to be. But I thought, well, maybe all this work that he's been doing for, you know, the last 5 to 6 months was finally catching up, which made me feel good, knowing that if we're going to do this, at least we've got better quality sperm going into the IVF process. So I'm not going to tell you much more than that because everything else is going to be explained in my documentary, I guess you could call it, on my IVF process. I'll just give you a heads up that it is very emotional. There is a lot of crying in the beginning, and so much so that, you know, because I'm so happy now, it's actually really hard for me to see because I'm like, wow, like that's just that emotional and draining for me that I almost don't want to rewatch it again because I don't feel like that right now. But at the same time, I know that it has to be shared. And the good news is that there is lots of positive and there's lots of light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I also want to acknowledge that I am so lucky. We are so lucky and so grateful that IVF worked first time for us. And the amount of people who I've met who are still on their IVF journey, and it's just been a really shit road for so many people. So many people it doesn't work first time. So many people, they have to go through it several times. Some people don't even get any eggs on the egg collection. I've even seen people in the IVF groups where their husband had no sperm at all. You know, and then there are some people who need to get egg donors. There are people who finally fall pregnant with IVF and sadly their baby doesn't make it. It is the most gut-wrenching process to go through in life. And I just cannot tell you enough just how much I don't take this for granted. And I know that even though for some people they might think that I've, you know, already had to go through enough to get here, so, you know, I deserve this, and I do feel like I deserve this, but at the same time there are also going to be people who think, wow, you're so lucky, and know that I know that, and I really do feel for you, and I hope that you can get that good news soon. So enjoy these upcoming videos in the next several weeks, maybe even months. There's a lot of content, and if you have any questions at all, or there's anything you would like me to add or include, I would love to do that and include some more videos that can help you guys as well.